Unjustly fire me? Let me make you go bankrupt real quick. Posted by In The Hague. If you like these stories and want to see more, please like and subscribe. I was told to post this here, so here we go. This happened a few years ago and still makes me giggle with glee to this day. I'm a 34 years old female who has always been a bit of a tomboy. I like cars, sports and reptiles. When I was 25, I wanted a career change and finally followed my dream of working in an auto repair shop, as a painter, like my father always did. To start my education, I needed to already have a job at an auto repair shop as an intern. So I searched and called a lot of companies to see if they had spots. There were literally several companies that laughed at me because there's no place for a woman on the work floor. Disheartened, I tried one final company, who said he'd take a chance with me. I was thrilled. I was promised lots of opportunities to learn and a steady job after graduation. I started a week later, and the first 2 weeks were awesome. I learned a lot and was promised even more opportunities, and he promised I would have 2 to 3 hours a week of private time with the resident painter for practice. Soon after, though, it went downhill. The owner had bid on a contract with a large city in our country to restore underground containers. I had to sand them down, put sealant on the edges and prepare them for painting. Tedious work, but I did it diligently. The promised practice time never happened. After a while, all I did, day in, day out, 8 hours a day, was sand down underground containers. By the end of the day, my hands and wrists were numb from the vibrations. This BTW is illegal. You're not allowed to sand with a pneumatic sanding machine for more than 4 hours a day in my country, as it causes severe wrist and hand issues. After several months the contract with the city ended, and I hoped my promised practice time would come. But no, it didn't. I was given jobs that had nothing to do with my education. I was told to do jobs that a contractor should do. Like put rebar in front of the windows, repair the sliding doors, repair walls and other small things. Basically nothing to do with my desire to become a painter. After 6 months of doing literally nothing that I could count to my education, my boss called me into his office. He told me he was fed up with my attitude, he made a mistake hiring me. I was fired, on the spot. I was heartbroken and cried the whole way home. I didn't get it. I put 110% into my job, working hard, always on time, staying late if needed and never complained. I didn't understand what happened, and was pretty down for a while. However, several days later I found out I was pregnant, which helped me get over my downness. We had been trying for over a year, so we were ecstatic. When the time came that my final paycheck should come in, nothing happened. A week after it normally came in, I called, but was told to not complain and it would be transferred shortly. 2 weeks later, still nothing. I called again and got a very irate boss on the line, cursing at me and calling me things I will not repeat here. I was fed up, and contacted my lawyer. Here comes the revenge part, mwahaha. In my country, there's apparently a few laws that my boss broke, without me even knowing about them. First, you're not allowed to fire somebody without reasonable cause. You need to document bad behavior, and give the employee a write-up. After 2 write-ups you're allowed to terminate. My boss never did this. Unlawful termination can end in a fine, and the employee has a right to get as many monthly pays as the employment contract would have continued if the employee wasn't terminated. Which would mean I had a right to another 6 months of pay. Second, you must pay the final paycheck within a week of termination. We were now going on week 4. After the first week, an employee is entitled to compensation of up to €100 per day of not receiving their paycheck. Meaning I was now entitled to at least €2,100 extra pay. My lawyer wrote up a letter to my boss, stating we would be pursuing my legal rights. He didn't respond. A week later we sent another letter, increasing the compensation for late payment as we went. After a month of my lawyer not getting any response, suddenly I received my pay. No compensation, nothing, just basic pay. My lawyer recommended to go to small claims court, and so we did. Mind you, it takes about 3 months before you can appear before court. He didn't even show up in court, but sent a statement through his lawyer, saying how I was a horrible employee, blah blah blah. However, he had no proof whatsoever, but I did. I had my performance reports from 1 month into employment and 4 months into employment. And they were stellar? The judge saw right through my boss's bullshit and awarded me minus 6 months of pay, 12,000 euros minus 4 months of late payment compensation. This is because he didn't pay the full amount my lawyer requested, as was my legal right. About 12,000 euros legal fees. Now about 3,000 euros I was paid the same week. He was then also charged with a fine for violating employment laws. He had to pay 50k. This resulted in the Employment Bureau. This agency makes sure companies comply with employment laws, etc., investigating the company. They discovered the building I worked at was unsafe. The foundation was unstable, walls were crumbling and tilting. He was told to make repairs or they would close him down within a month. By accident they discovered he was also cheating on his taxes. So the tax agency got involved. He got charged with embezzlement and tax evasion for both his companies. He had to pay back all taxes he evaded, plus a 100% fine, coming to a staggering 250k over several years. He didn't have that kind of money, and after struggling for about 2 months, which resulted in him not paying his other employees, he went belly up. Both businesses shut down, and the building I worked at even got demolished. 7 years later it's still an empty plot, and if I ever feel put down by somebody, I take a short drive to that place. And it reminds me, people will sometimes get what they deserve. Edit. Wow, the response to this has shocked me. And I wanted to answer some common questions. I'm from the Netherlands, and yes, I'm using dollar and the name IRS. Mostly because I wanted to make this post easier to read for everybody. I'll not use them in the future as it seems to confuse some people. Sorry about that. Yes, my colleagues lost their jobs too, though they did encourage me to seek justice. They too were wronged by him. First off, he let them work in an unsafe environment, which he knew was unsafe. And after I left, he asked his employees to work for free as he had financial issues which were later proven to be untrue, at that point anyway lol. Most didn't accept this and left the company. The ones who stayed did lose their job when he went belly up. I kept in contact with most of them, 2 went into early retirement and are happily enjoying it. Others have moved on and found better jobs within the week. I did feel guilty at first, but the end result, including my colleagues finding better employment, made it worth it. Yes, I did find another painting job for about 3 years, after which I got ill and am now waiting on a kidney transplant / also in a wheelchair. Genetics, not environmental. Kid is doing fine, he's 7 now. The sweet age of them being awesome and slightly annoying all at the same time, haha. And finally a shout out to my favorite YouTuber R/ his videos inspired me to actually sit down and write this all down. And now for the top comments. As a fellow Dutch woman, it really saddens me to hear so many workplaces told you there's no place for a woman there. I thought our country was better than that. But awesome revenge. Wow, this was an amazing post. When the boss had to pay you 27k euro, I thought that was le morceau de resistance, aka the piece of resistance, but then, he has to pay an extra fee of 250k? Honestly, at the end I was giddy as heck. I'm glad that the ending of this was that much satisfying for you. As a master mechanic, leermeester in Dutch, from the Netherlands, my first reaction is, WTF, why are shops still going with the bonkers assumption that women can't do the work? If anything, most car shops could use a few more women to keep the sexism down a bit. Now I am not without blame. I do make my share of remarks. Most are just cheeky but still sexist. One of my favorite remarks is that anything goes better with some lube. But I digress. Good for you and standing up for your rights. It sucks the other guys lost their jobs, but if it really was an unsafe workplace, it's probably for the best. I hope you get your health back, and wish you all the best. One question though, did you manage to get your training finished? I hope you did. It would be a shame if you stopped following that dream because of that asshat. And now for our next story. In Good and Bad Times. Posted by God VDC. Hi there. I have a small story to share. It's my grandmother-in-law that shared this with me and my wife last night. However, this is not really nuclear revenge or but I didn't know in which subreddit to share this, as it involves quite some disturbing thought. Also, the usual, English is not my prime language and on my mobile phone. My grandmother is fairly wealthy. Thanks to family money and a few good investments, she built up her inheritance to what it is now. Due to never having to work and enjoying the finer things in life, a bottle of white wine a day keeps the doctor away. She had quite the circle of friends that are quite wealthy or successful themselves. It's like a cliché from a movie. This story involves one of her friends. I will call her friend Maria and her husband will be named Joseph. Maria and Joseph were long time married. They started with a small furniture business. Maria was the salesperson and Joseph was responsible for buying the new collections. While Maria had to stay in the country and keep an eye on the shop and the kids, Joseph could venture through Europe in the search of new, cheap but nice furniture to flip with a huge profit. It all started fine. Kids were growing up and the shop got quite successful, eventually becoming one of the biggest ones in the country. This thanks to mutual effort of Maria and Joseph. However, dark clouds started to form in their marriage. Joseph wasn't only looking to score furniture, he also scored loads of women in other countries, leaving Maria alone for weeks while he scored a few couches and slept on some ass wheel. This is the pre-digital era, so no mobile phones yet. Only the promise to send a letter once in a while. During their life together, Joseph would cheat on Maria every time he saw the chance. After a while, he even didn't care anymore if Maria knew. He would even bring his mistresses to the home city to spoil them in fancy restaurants. Note, this was a different time. Women rights are established now, but this wasn't always the case. When Maria decided that it was enough, the abuse began. Mentally as physically, he started to abuse her for a long period in their marriage. She couldn't leave him because of the kids, because of her lifestyle and because of the business, and he knew, so she endured, and every time she decided to fight back, painful consequences happened. He was the man, even having intercourse with her without her permission to establish his rights as the man. Later in their life, they are becoming elders, gave the shop to their kids and retired. I decided to take it easy. Maria long lost her interest already in Joseph but still couldn't leave him. When money is involved, people tend to endure a lot. And Joseph got sick, really sick. A combination of Parkinson and cancer. Eventually ending up in a wheelchair. Maria, like every good old wife, decided to nurse him till she couldn't do that anymore. In my country you have something like euthanasia. If you still have a good mind and you have a lot of pain, you can go to the doctors and the notary and draft a paper that whenever you cannot care for your own anymore, you can commit legal suicide, simplifying terms. Note, it's important to say that the spouse has to keep the official letters and make the final say, because the person involving it often doesn't have the correct mindset anymore. And thus, her revenge began. Joseph got worse. Joseph got in the hospital and his cancer started to infest his body. He was a shade of his former self. Having pain all day and morphine could only help so much. Even though he was in the hospital for weeks and weeks, even though he begged and begged to Maria to hand over the euthanasia papers, she simply smiled and said no. Which papers? The first week he got in the hospital, she burned the papers. For weeks to come, he begged to die. For weeks Maria was at his side and simply said no, maybe tomorrow. Slowly watching her husband fade away. Hearing his pain, his begging. She would always answer that this is what he deserved. For the exterior world, Maria was a caring wife and Joseph was simply too far gone to make sense, if he rattled about the papers to someone else. 4-5 weeks in the hospital and Joseph died. A not so nice death, painful, gruesome, exactly on the terms that Maria decided how he should die. I found this tale quite disturbing. Maria got her revenge on her husband, giving him hope that it could be his last day and the pain will end, but crushing it every day again as well, to let him suffer in a cancer-infested body and to die on her terms, slow fully. And now for the top comments. That sent chills down my spine. Imagine if you told Maria in the early years of her marriage, that she and her husband would grow old together, and she would take care of him during advanced stages of illness, and she would drag out his long, painful death as retribution for the pain he caused her for years. It's likely that young Maria would never believe that their relationship would turn out like this. It's daunting how you might not know your marriage mate at all. I don't think any revenge is good enough for having to waste your life and happiness as being a captive in an abusive relationship. I hope he was gone a lot and Maria was able to enjoy her life in his absence. I love revenge, but holy shit. That was disturbing to say the least. Shouldn't have read this before bed. Wow. That is intense. And it's kind of ironic as well, seeing he controlled her all the way up until the end, where she then controlled him. Interesting, and disturbing. What's your say on this? Do you have a similar story? Comment below, and don't forget to like and subscribe.